Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is uproot. And this verb was suggested by the viewer Luis. Luis, thank you so much for this suggestion. Now let's take a moment and look at some of the definitions or ways that we can use this verb. The first way you may encounter the verb uproot can mean to pull something, especially a tree or some kind of plant, out of the ground. So the idea here with this first definition is if we look at our root word here, root, right? Those are the structures that give the plants nutrients. They're in the ground. It may sort of create that firm base for it. So up as a prefix here can help us sort of envision this first action, right? Pulling something out by the roots. A second way we might encounter the verb uproot could mean to eradicate or destroy. Here, it just doesn't have to be plants. It could be anything, some kind of object. It also might be something we can't see. So a particular feeling or emotion that is being destroyed. A third way you might encounter the verb uproot can mean to move someone from their home or a familiar location. And I think we could actually even make that third definition broader, not just a person, but really anything, or maybe an animal in this case. We'll look at some examples of these definitions a little bit later. For now, you should know that uproot is a regular verb. If you want to make the progressive form of this verb, all you need to do is add ing, and that forms uprooting. The past tense and the participle form of the verb can be made by adding ed. Now the base verb uproot ends in a T sound. This means our ed ending is going to make an id sound, and we're going to add an extra syllable to the word when we pronounce it. So the past tense and the participle form of the verb should sound like this: uprooted, uprooted. Okay. Now, there is a phrasal verb that you may encounter. Definitions aren't really that different from what we've discussed, but I always like to explain them and provide a few more examples. So the one phrasal verb you may encounter is to uproot from. And the first way to use it is to mean to remove the entirety of some plant, or and maybe you're moving it from some material or from a particular type of container, or perhaps from a location. An example of this might be, the derecho uprooted hundreds of trees from the ground. Derecho might not be all that familiar of a word. It is a straight line windstorm. It's sort of like a powerful hurricane force, but it's inland. And this happened a few years ago, very close to where I live. And I bet my estimate here of hundreds in my town probably isn't accurate. It was probably more like thousands of trees. But that idea, they came completely out of the ground. Not just some branches snapping off of them, but the roots came out of the ground. A second way to use uproot from can mean to cause or force someone or some group to leave their established location. An example of this might be, the massive flooding uprooted thousands from their homes. This is suggesting kind of their permanent living places, and now they've been forced to go somewhere else. Maybe the homes have been destroyed, their streets are no longer safe, etc. Now let's continue using our verb of the day in a couple different verb tenses. Today we will review the simple present and the present progressive. Let's start with the simple present. We use this verb tense to talk about our habits and our routines. We can also use it to discuss facts. And when we make sentences in the simple present, we must pay attention to our subject because our verb will change just a little bit. In the affirmative or in a positive sentence, if our subject is I, you, we, or they, we're just going to use the base verb. So no special endings, no suffixes on the verb. But if our subject is he, she, or it, then we need to add an S to the end of the verb. Let's take a look at an example sentence here. Wars, political instability, and climate change uproot families. So this, to me, sounds a bit like some kind of politician or maybe someone running for office trying to talk about what forces people to relocate or leave a particular area. Maybe they're going to launch into some new policy ideas as to what would deal with this particular issue. Now, if you want to make a negative simple present sentence, then again, we're going to pay attention to our subject. If the subject is I, you, we, or they, we'll use do not and then the base verb. If your subject is he, she, or it, then you want to use does not and then the base verb. Here's another example. Wind speed under 50 miles per hour doesn't uproot trees. So maybe here someone is trying to be kind of reassuring about this sort of factual statement. Things could still break, or maybe something that's unhealthy, it could fall, but it's the strength of the wind is not going to pull the roots out, is what that sentence is suggesting. Now let's take a look at making a yes or no question in the simple present. To do this, you would want to start with do or does, followed by your subject, and then the base verb. An example of this in a sentence might be, does the amateur horticulturist uproot plants from his greenhouse to plant outside regularly? So here this might be that idea of removing a plant, maybe from like a container, and planting it somewhere else. So this suggests that this is someone's hobby, growing things in a very heated, warm space that's meant to further sort of produce various types of plants, especially in climates where it might not be that friendly year-round. Now let's move on and talk about sentences in the present progressive. Some of you may know this as the present continuous, and that's just fine if your teacher or your textbook uses that term. Either term is referring to an action that's happening now or an action that is in progress during a time period that has not yet been completed. I like saying present progressive with my students because 2 P's can help them remember that they will need 2 parts to make their verb. We will be using a present form of be and then the ing form of our verb here. And be has 3 forms in the present tense, so we're going to have to pay attention to our subject. If our subject is I, then we want to use am and then the verb with the ing ending. But if our subject is you, we, or they, we'll use are, A-R-E, and then the ing form of the verb. Finally, if our subject is he, she, or it, we'll use is, and then that ing form of the verb. Let's take a look at another example. It says, Norway is uprooting its fuel pumps as electric cars take over. I believe this statement was meant as more of kind of a headline or a short summary of a particular article describing this idea of things being removed. So maybe a little strong than destroyed because it's sort of intentional, but fewer people need to pump gas in this particular country because more and more people are driving electric vehicles. Now let's move on and make a sentence in the negative, also in present progressive. Again, to do this, we've got to pay attention to our subject. We want to use the form of be that matches, followed by not, and then the verb with the ing ending. Here's another example. We are not uprooting residents or businesses during this remodel. Again, I saw a sentence very similar to this from the owner. I think it was of some space that was both commercial and residential, sort of in some ways discussing what's happening now. There were maybe reports that people were being forced out of their apartments while improvements were being made, and they were trying to clear up that no one is being forced from that permanent spot. Finally, let's take a look at a yes or no question here in the present progressive. To do this, start with your form of be, whatever form matches that subject that comes next, then use the ing form of the verb. Here's another example. Is the farmer uprooting weeds now? Now, I'm going to tell you, that wording seems a little odd to me, and where I live, I don't think I would really use it that way, but I did see this example used in a couple different ways and in different regions. And I want to acknowledge very valid English is spoken all over the globe. What I would hear people using in the Midwest, where I am, is just calling that action weeding. Is the farmer weeding now? And that would mean removing the weeds, taking them out by the root. So let's move on now and talk about a couple words that are related to our verb uproot. And the first word we're going to discuss is the noun form of this word. It's uprootedness. This is the state of being either pulled from the roots. So again, if we're talking about a plant, or if we're talking about a person, we might be talking about someone being displaced from some kind of familiar environment. An example of this might be, in this class, we will be examining the literature of uprootedness. So maybe this particular teacher or professor has assembled various stories or poems, something of that nature, where people are talking about leaving a familiar environment. One more word for us today. It's the noun uprooter. This is describing a person or thing that pulls something up by its roots. It might be destroying it completely, or it might be forcing a person or group to leave their home. An example of this might be, along with road widening, the commuter railway has emerged as a major uprooter of the city's trees. Here we're kind of talking about what's responsible for the tree loss, or the things that have been kind of pulled out and destroyed, it sounds, through sort of transportation improvements being made in a particular city. Again, I want to say a special thanks to Luis for suggesting today's verb. I thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.